back.
Hello to all, and welcome back into the channel for our third and final character study, this time of Tobias and the gangs. Now real quick before we get into that, there are a couple of advisories I want to bring to your attention. Number one, by the posting of this video a week later on the 12th of April, just remember, episode 7 of Black Lightning will air on the CW, and I will have that review uploaded the day that it airs. And number two, per usual, if you have not seen these episodes and you are new to our channel, please be advised we do deal heavily in spoilers. So now, let's get into our character study.
I'm locked up with these Falcons, Haitians, pacing and implications.
For each incarnation of Superman or Batman, there's either Lex Luthor or Joker to have to contend with. Tobias Whale in regards to Black Lightning is no exception. Tobias made his debut in the first issue of Black Lightning exactly 44 years ago, seeing as how the first issue dropped in April of 1977. Now, while there may have been many retellings of Tobias Whale before the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, which changed a lot of things up at DC, his usual incarnation as the albino equivalent of Wilson Fisk or Kingpin, in case that comparison slipped your mind, consists of Tobias being affiliated with the 100 Gang, either as leader or the very next person in charge. In fact, in the comics, Joey Toledo, which is sort of a throwaway character in the TV series, along with Syonide, who happens to be a man in the source material, are front and center and featured as his primary henchman within the comics. Although while in the show, Freeland is his usual stomping grounds, it is the slums of Metropolis that would serve as a proving grounds of sorts, where the two would wage war in hopes to achieve one goal:
Total supremacy.
Which brings us to the bare bones and gristle, or in other words, the zeitgeist of what served as the inspiration for the likes of such characters such as Jefferson Pierce, Tobias Whale, along with Luke Cage, and a host of others from those days. Well, actually, it was two things. Number one, it points to the rise and continuation of blaxploitation culture that emerged in the late 60s and gained momentum well into the 70s.
Sweet Christmas.
Now, we won't go into further detail other than this quick mention, but if you're willing to do your own due diligence on this subject, then it will make sense of the usage of a certain color palette, if you will, for the colorful use and display of dialogue, character traits, settings, and overall tone of the specific type of entertainment that sprung from that era. And number two, the influx of Kung Fu into American culture made martial arts a permanent as well as indispensable component to action movies and, in this case, a weekly TV show that will never be erased anytime soon. So now when it comes to the character of Tobias Whale, one thing the TV series has done to add a few more dimensions to his character is give him a damaged and scarred backstory, such as his father abusing him and his sister, which I myself did not come across in the comics and seems to be an original addition to the show. Yet, it is this tragic backstory which has made Tobias Whale into the heartless, cold, and calculating man that we see on the screen. It seems to be a very conscious effort and can likewise be seen as a means to counterbalance his lack of control in his childhood. And yes, the harpoon in the show, which was used in the first episode, is his weapon of choice in the comics. But lastly, and most importantly, before we move on to the next segment, when it comes to the age-old dynamic of hero and villain, very few if any have plagued their hero like Tobias has Jefferson. Tobias has, in some way, shape, or form, ran Freeland for decades, is responsible for green light and metas flooding the streets, and even killed Jefferson's father in the show, even though in the comics, that was actually done by Gamby's hand. Yeah, I know. But when it comes to the perfectly written antagonists, they were meant to portray the dark side or the polar opposite of the hero. Tobias at this point in the show has been far more in control of his personal actions than Jefferson, even though the two have been purposely put in nearly identical situations. And again, as much as I have theorized about this, it just seems so very odd at times that the villain of this show, and this observation applies to those who have been keeping up with the series, Tobias Whale, seems to be far more superior than Jefferson most of the time. Which begs the question, how will they balance this out with only 7 episodes left in the series?
I'll just get the money and the power, you know the rest.
So as we have learned earlier in this video, how Joey Toledo, Syonide, and Tori Whale were the most trusted accomplices of Tobias. The 100 Gang of Freeland in the TV series versus the Suicide Slums in the comics are somewhat different, though in some cases, these variations are quite drastic. Like Lady E, for example, who has no comic book counterpart, though can be seen as a reimagining of sorts of Mama Mambu from issue 490 of Volume 1, which came out in 1980. And just like in the TV show, is dealing with some sort of juju, like her would-be comic book counterpart who deals in Vodun. Lala as well, having no comic book equal, could also be a retelling of King of the Royal Family Gang, which later on down the line in the comics becomes the 1000 Gang. And in the second issue of the 1985 run, he hires Painkiller, which of course in the case of the TV show, Painkiller is created by Tobias Whale. And for me personally as a viewer, it's the most compelling and outrageous part of this show. Now Destiny, who has taken over the role of Lady Eve, is also an original within the Black Lightning canon, is appointed the new head of the Kobra Cartel and ends up hiring Ishmael, which is a new character to the show. It's definitely a nod to the comics due to his time in the Lazarus Pit from the Arrow TV show, which comes from Batman lore. But what is most interesting is the overall theme of resurrection, which is quite present in the comics as well. And though it would seem characters like Lala and Lady Eve who were resurrected by Lazarus Prime, and no, he has no relation to a comic book character. Even though he resurrected both Lady Eve and Lala, and though they do seem indisposed at the present, is it possible that the only way Jefferson takes out Tobias will be some type of team up from these characters in the finale? Well, that just about does it. Stay tuned in the Content Meta for more reviews or character studies just like this one. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and until then, see you then.